Are you ready to transform your next teaching interview from a nerve-wracking, stress-filled moment to a showcase of your passions and your talents? I've been where you are, and I know the questions that can make or break your interview. Stay tuned as I reveal the secrets to mastering the most challenging teacher interview questions and help you craft answers that will leave a lasting impression. Get a pen, a piece of paper, get ready to take some notes because we're starting right now. Hey everybody, Gordon Amerson here, Superintendent of Schools and Certified Strengths Coach. And on this channel, we leverage my experience from classroom teacher to school district superintendent to help you go further, faster in your educational journey. If this is your first time with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you don't miss any cool updates or any of our newest episodes. All right, everybody. So today we're going to talk about some critical questions and answers that will help you navigate your next teacher interview. And whether it's your first interview for your first teaching job, or you're a veteran and you're transitioning, you're going from one school side or maybe to a different district, hopefully the insights from these questions and just thinking about how you attack these questions and how the principal or the interview panel is going to receive the strategy that you employ when you answer these questions will help you stand out amongst the crowd. That's the goal. That's the intent. So we're going to jump in because we're going to give you 3 strategies to answer 3 very, very specific questions that you're likely to see on that next teacher interview. Buckle up. Here we go with number 1. All right. Question number 1 that you're likely to get on a teacher interview. What is your teaching philosophy and how does it help and support your scholars? Now, the question may come in some different forms or fashions, there's different variations, but the basis of this question is all about who are you? What do you believe? And what about your beliefs are going to help support your scholars, your students to be successful? So when you tackle this question, think through reflecting on your own experience as a student. Think about the core values, the things that you believe, the ways that you've been raised, who you are, and what is special and core to your identity. These are going to be the pieces that will help you lay out the passion that you have for students, the passion that you have for education, the passion that you have for seeing students grow and develop and have those aha moments where they know that they've just unlocked the key to some learning. Tying that back to your own lived experience, a teacher that inspired you, an experience in school that inspired you, a field trip, an internship, an opportunity, an assembly, some sort of a moment that ties you back to your passion and why it is that you are excited about teaching and how that translates to supporting students, nurturing students, and growing students. This is the kind of the core essence of addressing what's your teaching philosophy. What are you drawing from? What are you thinking about? What are you going back to as a foundation for who you are as a human being and as an educator and as a professional? These are things that are going to help you in answering this question. So just really quickly to kind of put this into some context. Think through who you are, what you believe, and what drives you from a past experience, from a learned experience within your preparation, and then how does that apply to students? How will you take that experience and use it to enhance the lives and the teaching and learning experiences of your students in your classroom? That's the way you tackle what is your teaching philosophy and how will it benefit students. Use that in your next teacher interview. It's going to benefit you greatly. Let's talk about question number 2. And question number 2 is, can you provide an example of a challenging classroom situation and how you handled it? Now, for our brand new teachers, you're going to want to think about in your experience, maybe in your student teaching, if you've been an intern, if you served as a guest teacher or a substitute teacher in that case, think about some tangible example of a challenging circumstance that you've had to use, that you've had to deal with in a classroom. A disruptive student, an emotional student, not just disruptive, but maybe the student was having some emotional challenges. Maybe they were going through some sort of a crisis. But the real key to this question and being able to demonstrate to the principal who may be interviewing you or the assistant principal or a hiring panel is they're going to be looking for your problem solving skills. They're also going to be looking for it in the context of a classroom, your ability to be empathetic, compassionate, and nurturing to the students. It's going to be really, really important because at the end of the day, when you get in that classroom, it's going to be you and your scholars, your students together. And you want to create that rich, warm, nurturing environment where we can deal with tough issues, we can deal with challenges, but we're also able to demonstrate some care, some empathy, and some compassion for our students, because we're going to spend so much time with them, and we want to build those authentic relationships where they know that they're cared for and you can be trusted. So another good strategy you can use, and you can check out some of our previous videos on the STAR method, which is the ability to take a situation, a task, and an action and then a result, and apply that framework to being able to answer a question around a disruptive student, a student who might be in the middle of a crisis, some sort of a challenge within the classroom. But applying problem solving skills, analytical skills, and then some real important EQ, emotional quotient skills, being able to show and demonstrate that high level of EQ, meaning that you can be empathetic and compassionate, is going to be the key to this question of dealing with a challenging circumstance within a classroom. So use those frameworks, use those ideas to be able to tackle this question, which is almost assuredly going to come up in some form or fashion in your next teacher interview. All right, question number 3. How do you assess and improve student learning? This is where the rubber meets the road. At the core, our existence as a professional educator is to teach children, but also to ensure that children learn. And a major component of that is our ability to assess their learning in real time in both short-term and long-term perspectives. So when you're tackling this question, you want to think about, how do I demonstrate my ability to show that I'm able to talk about formative assessments like bell starters, right when students come in. How do I immediately get them engaged? How do I immediately get them thinking about how they demonstrate their learning of the content, potentially as a preview for the day, or potentially as the content that was presented the day before? But what is that starter activity? What is that first 2 to 3 minutes of a class? What does that look and feel like to get some formative assessment of how students are doing within the class and within the scope and sequence of the content that you're presenting? So thinking about formative assessments, quick, short questions, sponge activities, quick pair share, think pair share, collaborative conversations, descriptive dialogues that are happening in dyads or triads with your students. Those formative assessments where you can be circulating the room and you can be listening to the conversation, you can be listening and absorbing what your students are able to share and demonstrate their learning to one another, and then also the ability to share and demonstrate their learning back to you. So thinking about those formative assessments as an example, and I've given you just a couple, think pair share opportunities. You can do other differentiated opportunities to actually gauge their checking for understanding in the moment. But those formative assessments will tell you whether you're on the right path or whether you need to go in a different direction. And this is the difference between understanding what students are learning and what they know in the moment, and then how do you improve their learning outcomes because you're listening to that formative information. You're listening to that formative data, and then you're going to then pivot and determine whether you go in a different direction because you need to reteach, or you need to reassess, or you need to move forward. And then at the end, once we've done a lot of formative assessments and we've checked along the way, then we want to do effective summative assessments. And summative assessments don't just have to be an actual question and answer exam. It can be some sort of a performance task. You can start to ask students to demonstrate their learning in different ways, in a visual way, in a written way, in a performance type of assessment, in some sort of engrossed experiential activity. It doesn't just have to be in what we would call a traditional formal assessment of an exam with 40 or 50 questions where students are just plugging and chugging, but rather how do they demonstrate their learning and the application of that learning in a more dynamic way. You can do both. You need to have both of those summative assessments. Exams, yes, they're necessary and needed, but also other types of summative assessments where students can demonstrate their application of learning and the dynamic way that they've actually learned the information by demonstrating that to you in a lot of different interesting and unique ways. So your ability to showcase this to the panel to show that, hey, I know how to do formative assessments, but I also know how to do summative assessments to put the end cap on, knowing that I know that my students know and understand and have learned the content in that scope and sequence of that last unit. But then also understanding that as we chunk along the way, that those formative assessments are going to be key guideposts to determine whether I'm moving in the right direction or whether I need to pivot and do something different. Your ability to demonstrate that to interview panel is going to be critical, because this is what we are asking all of our teachers to be able to do effectively every single day they're in their classrooms. Every single unit, we're looking for this out of a teacher's performance. So thinking about how you can demonstrate that to the interview panel is going to be super important. So those are 3 examples of critical questions that will help you be able to stand out in your next teacher interview. They're not the only ones, but those are high frequency questions that you're likely to get pretty often. And again, if you want some effective strategies to be able to tackle those questions, apply frameworks. And one of those frameworks, a great example, is the STAR method. Check this video out for more about the STAR method. It'll help you in your next teacher interview. Best of luck on your next interview, and we'll see you real soon.